Number 5 on this list is a giant eel. This is a true story that comes in from a Reddit user, RCMW181. They write, an old World War II ammunition ship off the south coast of England was full of brass-topped shells. Most had been taken by divers over the years, and it was now very rare to see them, apart from a pile in one corner of the ship. The pile of shiny brass metals was miraculously untouched and remarkably clean after spending years underwater, and you only found out why if you swam near them. Out of the murky darkness, the largest eel I have ever seen snakes forward. Without exaggeration, this thing had a head the same size as a horse's head, full of jagged teeth. I could not see the body as it looped into the dark and deeper into the ship. No one got near those shells. Turns out for years this thing had been guarding the shiny brass shells, slithering over them, making them shine. We found out at a bar later that he was famous in the area, and many people went to the wreck just to see him. No idea why this giant creature was guarding them like a dragon and its horde, but some said eels are like magpies and like shiny things. There are multiple scary discoveries in this story in my opinion. First off, a Reddit user just glosses over the fact that they're in a sunken World War II munitions ship. They don't say so, but I would have imagined that people would have died on that ship when it sunk, and there may have even been some remains of the dead still down there. Then to come face to face with a giant eel that is extremely protective over these brass shells would be terrifying. If that was a giant moray eel, then those creatures can grow up to 2.5 meters in length and can be very deadly in the water. Had that creature interpreted what our diver was doing as threatening, then they may not have made it to shore later that day to be able to share the story. Number 4 on this list is a freezer. This story from a Reddit user is just all kinds of creepy. Count_Dynamo writes, I've done a number of dives, and the strangest thing I ever saw was a large deep freezer with a heavy industrial chain wrapped around multiple times with about 5 cinder blocks attached. It was very rusted, and the deep freezer itself had to have been 30 years old, probably more. This was about 90 feet just off of Vancouver Island, Canada. The situation gave myself and the other divers the heebie-jeebies. Logged the GPS and depth coordinates and notified the police. We were able to find out what was inside since one of the divers had friends with the local police. 10 porcelain dolls. Now for starters, I'm actually kind of happy that they found porcelain dolls inside that freezer, because when I was initially reading that story and heard about a freezer that was locked up and weighed down, I initially thought of a dead body, but having 10 porcelain dolls raises a lot of questions. Were these dolls potentially cursed and that was the only way to get rid of them? If you've ever come in contact with a cursed doll, then locking it up is the first thing to do. Ed and Lorraine prove it with their handling of the Annabelle doll. If these dolls are cursed though, then this discovery gets even more scary. Clearly, whoever locked them in that freezer threw them to the bottom of the ocean and didn't want them to be found. Bringing them back up to the surface probably wasn't the best idea. Number 3 on this list is a color change. Now, a color change doesn't really sound that scary at all, but in this particular case, it's definitely pretty creepy. A diver writes, I was diving off the coast of Fiji and we went through a natural tunnel, like a 10-meter cave/passage through a rock formation. So we start swimming through the cave and suddenly the light was weird, like the blue tint from the water has been replaced by a red one. Now all divers will know that this isn't only weird because the color changed, but also because red is the first color to disappear after a certain depth, usually between 30 to 40 feet, and we were well over 70 feet. Also bear in mind this was late morning on a sunny day. So imagine this scene. Me and my dive buddy are going through an underwater cave and suddenly everything, for no apparent reason, is tinted red, a color that you were literally supposed to be unable to see while diving at that depth during the day. Upon exiting the cave, everything was back to blue. I thought it was just me, so I didn't signal to go back up. After the dive, my buddy asked me if I'd seen the water tint red as well. We can't explain it, and the folks from the local dive shop had no idea what we were talking about. Now that story is super weird. We've got to keep in mind that these guys were 70 feet below the surface at that point. If I was 70 feet below the surface and everything changed colors to a deep red, I would be very scared for my life. Obviously we don't know for sure, but It sounds like that cave that they stumbled upon is haunted by something. It's either haunted by something or that particular cave can produce some strange light phenomenon. Either way, it would have been very frightening, and I'm glad that the two divers in this story made it out okay. Number 2 on this list is a school of sharks. The next discovery comes in from a professional diver in the Bahamas who was diving down to recover a dead body. What's crazy about this story is that the dead body isn't the scary part. His online name is Keith Ba, and he writes, "After an hour or two of searching, I went back into the blue hole to see if there were any signs of him. Saw the glint of his watch and his arm sticking out near the bottom. Started descending down to the bottom to recover the body. On the way down, realized that the bottom was a school of sharks that must have been there for breeding. So many sharks that they blocked the view of the actual bottom. Descended into darkness, grabbed his arm, couldn't stand to look at the body, and started ascending. The sharks followed and were circling around the both of us. Had to take a break at halfway at around 60 feet as to not get the bends. Extremely scared. The entire time waiting to normalize being super scared. Victim was struck by a passing boat." So not only is finding a dead body underwater super scary in my opinion, but to stumble upon so many sharks that you can't even see the bottom of the ocean, that's beyond terrifying. Then to have said sharks follow you up to the surface, deciding whether or not they're going to eat you, would have been absolutely brutal. He didn't specify what type of sharks they were, but after doing some research, sharks tend to get far more aggressive during mating, and therefore the risk of our divers getting attacked is significantly increased. Also, the number of sharks that can gather during mating season can rise into the hundreds. One shark is scary enough and will likely win in a fight, but tens to even hundreds of them would have easily had their way with this diver. Not sure about you guys, but if that was me, I would be exclusively a land dweller from then on out. Number 1 on this list is a person. People aren't typically scary discoveries, but in this case by some deep sea divers, it definitely was. One diver writes, "Me and 2 buddies were on a night dive in the Puget Sound hunting prawns. It was about 1 a.m. and we're a good 100 feet deep, the darkest black you could imagine. We used to do this thing on night dives where we'd get in a circle, turn off our lights, then stir up the water and watch the bioluminescence float around us like floating stars in a black watery space. Only this time, we turn off our lights, stir up the water, and the water glows just enough to reveal a 4th person sitting in our circle. We were at a dive resort, so it wasn't so odd to see another diver, only it was 1 a.m. and we'd see nobody else prepping a dive at the dock. He was also alone, which was odd considering the dangerous conditions of a night dive in those waters, and he had no fins or gloves. I don't know how he swam so well without fins or didn't get hypothermia without boots or gloves. We wore dry suits because it was so cold, but this dude was in a wetsuit with exposed skin. We thought we saw a giant gash on one of his legs. So the 3 of us all notice him and we're too scared to move. I can hear my buddies panting in their regs and the guy just smiles, waves, and then swims away. Whenever you think you're alone and someone just shows up like in an alley at night, it's weird. 100 feet underwater at night is terrifying. After reading this story, I got some serious ghost vibes. Now obviously I can't know for sure and those divers didn't either, but this man just appeared out of nowhere and had a giant gash on his leg. He also wasn't wearing the proper gear and they didn't see him enter the water when they were getting ready to go. Potentially, rather than just be another diver out and about, this is the ghost of someone who went diving and died. Now their spirit just swims through the ocean for eternity. I've read a lot of ghost stories and reports of sightings before, and that has all the telltale signs of one.
Coming in at number 5, we have the narwhal tusk. If any of you have ever seen the movie Elf, then you're familiar with the cute narwhal in the beginning of the movie, and that movie really brought narwhals to the public's attention and making this sea creature more popular than ever before, but so much about this creature is a mystery. In 1577, the English explorer Martin Frobisher led an expedition of 150 men to the northern Canada in search of gold, but they had come across something they had never intended, and that was the sea unicorn. The myth of the unicorn goes back centuries, and the business of unicorn horn trade was sustained through the Middle Ages and Renaissance by Vikings who killed the so-called sea unicorns, cut off their horns and sold them for an astronomical price. As European naturalists became more familiar with the world's animal, the myth of the unicorn faded, but mystery of the sea unicorn continued. Frobisher's discovery was actually what we know today as the narwhal, but the horn itself continues to be speculated by many. But the horn is apparently not a horn at all, but is a tooth tooth. The relatives of narwhals include species like the beluga whales, orcas, and dolphins, but the mystery remains of how did this massive freakish tooth evolve in this one specific species after its ancestors branched off from whales with ordinary teeth. Many scientists and researchers debate about what this tooth is used for, and some suggest it's an acoustic probe, a rudder, an ice picker, or a spear for battling predators. These creatures don't make it easy for researchers to see them use their tusk for anything at all, so it makes many people continue to question it. Many have come up with many different theories about this so-called horn and what they use it for and why they have it. It has created a huge debate between researchers and scientists to this day, but no definite answer has come out to this day. In at number 4 we have the submarine disappearances in 1968. This is one giant mysterious situation, which is the disappearance of 4 submarines from 4 different countries in 1968. The USS Scorpion, a Soviet submarine K-129, a French submarine Minerve, and the INS Dakar went inexplicably missing over just a 5-month period, and the last 2 disappearing only 4 days apart. The exact causes of these sinkings remain unknown and remain a mystery over 50 years later. The INS Dakar was scheduled to arrive in Israel on January 29, 1968. When it didn't return, searchers went out to find it, but after a while there was no sign of the missing submarine. So the search ended on February 4th, and the 69-man crew was officially declared dead in 1981. The cause of the sinking was never determined, and theories say that either a mechanical or human error caused a catastrophic accident, or that the submarine snorkel was damaged after hitting another ship, causing it to flood. The Minerve was on the training operation in the Mediterranean on January 27, 1968, and when they were on their way home, the men were caught in a bad storm. When it was 30 miles away from the port, the Minerve made contact with the men on land and said it would port in about an hour, but an hour came and went, and the submarine had never returned. A frantic search was conducted with 20 vessels and aircrafts trying to locate the Minerve, but it was eventually called off on February 2nd when they found nothing. The K-129 with a crew of 98 descended on March 8, 1968, and almost 2 weeks into patrol on the North Pacific, the K-129 failed to send a scheduled radio message. The Soviets soon began a frantic search, and after 2 months of no sign of the submarine, they gave up their search. The cause of the ship sinking remains unknown and will likely never be known. Almost 3 months after the K-129, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered attack submarine with a crew of 99 men, went missing in the Atlantic while on its way back from a patrol in the Mediterranean. It was sent out on February 15, 1968, and toward the end of its patrol, it radioed that it was expected to return on May 27th. But as you can guess, the USS Scorpion would never return. Like the others, many searched for the lost ship, but on June 5th, the Scorpion and its crew were declared presumed lost. Over the years, there have been multiple searches for these submarines, but only parts have been recovered, and it's considered one of the biggest mysteries that happened in the sea. No one knows why so many went missing in such a short amount of time, how exactly they went missing for so long, and what exactly made these vessels disappear. And this is a mystery we may never get the answer to. Coming in at number 3, we have the Bermuda Triangle. Named for the triangular shape of around 500,000 square miles of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, for centuries the Bermuda Triangle has been mystified as a harrowing patch of ocean where sailors and pilots are prone to lose contact with the natural world and disappear forever. Back when Christopher Columbus first sailed the area, he claimed to see a giant ball of light in the sky that crashed into the horizon and made it glow. Soon after, all sorts of strange events happened in the area, including several boats mysteriously disappearing, and in one incident in 1945, an entire squadron of US torpedo bombers vanished into thin air due to all these weird instances, giving this place the name the Devil's Triangle. The exact number of ships and airplanes that have disappeared is not known, but it's estimated that around 50 ships and 20 planes have been victim to the Bermuda Triangle, and many of these mysterious disappearances of these ships and planes have never been recovered. Many see the Bermuda Triangle as a real phenomenon and have multiple theories to try and explain this mysterious place, and some of these theories are human error, paranormal explanations, violent weather like hurricanes, the Gulf Stream, which is a major surface current within the ocean, methane hydrates, which is a form of natural gas that causes bubbles to form around the ship and ultimately sink it without warning. All of these are only theories, and the Bermuda Triangle to this day is the most notorious sea legend of all time. In at number 2, we have the Gulf of Mexico's cursed shipwreck. An estimated 4,000 shipwrecks litter the seabed across the stretch of water, and the Gulf of Mexico is one of the wealthiest locations for maritime archaeology in the world. In February 2001, oil workers for ExxonMobil were laying some pipeline when they happened to stumble upon a shipwreck about 2,600 feet deep. After discovering the wreckage, a team was assembled to explore this mysterious ship, but nothing seemed to go right. The exploration submarine malfunctioned right as it was getting ready to go down to check out the wreck, and that was only the beginning of these mysterious malfunctions. Others include video monitors going out whenever they fired their thrusters, sonars breaking, and hydraulics going haywire with no explanation for any of these problems. After nothing working and things continuing to break, the Navy sent a researcher submarine down to investigate the wreckage, and on the way down it suddenly self-destructed, and somehow when it finally did get to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything. 6 months later, in July in 2002, a team working aboard the NR-1 decided to launch a robotic sub down to the wreck site, but the malfunctions continued. The second the rover entered the water, it veered to the right and went out of control. The tether had caught in the propellers, which caused the vessel to smash into the underside of the ship, and the rover was never recovered. Later in the summer of 2002, the curse would continue as a ship from Sustainable Sea Program of the NOAA offered to pick up artifacts from the site. The first time the vessel attempted to leave the dock, debris was lodged in the propeller. The second time, the propeller locked and the ship ended up in dry lock, needing repairs. Over the years, many others have tried to learn more about this wreck, but little was found, and what was found wasn't at all helpful. To this day, nothing has been able to get too close to the shipwreck to investigate and explore the phenomenon, and very little is known about this mysterious ship. Many believe the lives lost in the wreck continue to haunt the ship and will keep anyone and everything out of it at all costs. And finally, in at number 1, we have the unmapped ocean floor. This is truly one of the biggest mysteries, and humans' curiosity about the Earth's floor is centuries old. Much remains to be learned about the ocean, especially exploring the mystery of the deep sea. From mapping and describing the physical, biological, geological, chemical, and archaeological aspects of the ocean and understanding their dynamics. For centuries, scholars believed the deep sea to be a lifeless place. Until the late 19th century, we've discovered there is a diversity of life and creatures living down there. Many researchers and divers had tried to dive and take submarines down to explore more of this unknown place, but it's very hard due to the extremely cold temperatures, the darkness, and the literally bone-shattering pressure that's more than 1,000 times that at sea level. In 2019, a retired naval officer, Victor Vescovo, set a new record as one of the deepest dives to date, reaching almost 36,000 feet down in a submarine into the deepest place on Earth, the Marianas Trench. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, driving weather, regulating temperature, and ultimately supporting all life's organisms. Throughout history, the ocean has been a vital source of sustenance, transport, commerce, growth, and inspiration. But to this day, more than 80% of the ocean remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored, and it's still unknown how deep the ocean really is. Given the high degree of difficulty and cost in exploring our ocean using underwater vehicles, researchers have relied heavily on technologies such as sonar to generate maps of the seafloor, but currently less than 10% of the global ocean is mapped using modern sonar technology, and only about 35% of the United States have been mapped using modern methods. As we go deeper into the ocean floor, it's too deep for this modern technology because it's too remote and dark for this type of visual mapping. So if you go swimming in the ocean, it's very unknown of what is swimming and living below you. But scientists and researchers continue to develop technologies to unlock the many secrets of the ocean. The NOAA is working to increase our understanding of the ocean realm.
Starting us off at number 5, we have Yellow Jack. We're gonna set sail on a weird one to start us off. If you're a flag enthusiast, you might see the editing of this one coming from a mile away, but we'll get there in a minute. So the legend of Yellow Jack starts upon a spice and gold-filled ship preparing to leave the Indies and head back home. The crew was accounted for, the cargo was secure, the captain was feeling nice. Then, at the last second, a mysterious figure asked if they had room for one more. Feeling pretty good about their haul, they welcomed this extra pair of helping hands on board. Wrong move. Turns out this was a disreputable lad known as Yellow Jack, with a reputation so abhorrent that the ship was forbidden to enter any port she called upon. For ages, the crew sailed from port to port, hoping that someone would let them dock, but it never happened. They were forced to endlessly cruise the seas, running lower and lower on supplies. Patience, too. Eventually, the crew went mad and committed mutiny before they all murdered each other. Some say the ship is still sailing, the ghosts of these sea-locked sailors manning the helm. Someday they may find a port that will take them and they will finally be able to rest. In the meantime, they will sail the seas, infecting other ships with the same madness that Yellow Jack caused. Now this is a spooky, ghostly story in its own right, but it could also be a reference to a different ship killer at the time. Disease. The Yellow Jack is a flag flown by ships infected with plague, cholera, and other nasty, fast-spreading diseases. So Yellow Jack itself could be a metaphor for disease, and ports weren't letting them in because of quarantine procedures. Absolutely fascinating, and it would also make a killer movie. A pirate quarantine body horror. Think The Thing meets Wreck meets Pirates of the Caribbean. Oh damn. Coming in at number 4, we have the Caliucci, a Chilean ship sailing around an island known for its terrible storms. Shining white sides, 3 masts with 5 sails, blood red. The ship sails independent of any human input. Sure, there's a ghost crew, but the Caliucci is known for being sentient. The ship has a mind of its own. It'll glide along the water at incredible speeds and is able to submerge and continue navigating underwater, similar to the famous Flying Dutchman. When it passes, folks say you can hear the crew cackling for a brief moment. It's a ship known for the merriment of its ghostly crew. They throw parties often and hop around on one leg. The folks on board often only have one leg because the other is folded behind their back, similar to another Chilean mythological entity. To top off their strange looks and mannerisms, some crew members have backwards faces, terrifying all who lay eyes upon them. Some say the Caliucci is manned by sailors, both dead and alive, dragged from the depths and snagged off passing ships. Another legend says that the ship is piloted by the souls of the drowned, brought aboard by water spirits and granted the gift of life in exchange for their servitude. Not so sure that's a good deal, you know, life eternal, but you'll always be on a stinky ship? Maybe the parties are just that sick. Merchants who trade with Caliucci supposedly become very wealthy afterwards, and anyone who has laid eyes upon it wears a crooked smile forever. Again, interesting deal. Lots of money, crooked smile. I guess you could afford a dentist and some plastic surgery at that point. Coming in at number 3, we've got the ghost ship of the Northumberland Strait. Yes, Canadian ghost pirates. That pretty much sums up my career aspirations right there. I don't know if that means I would be pirating software related to ghosts or actually becoming a phantom upon the Northumberland Strait, but I don't really care as long as my title involves the words Canadian, ghost, and pirate. But back to the actual tale at hand. This ghost ship is said to sail when it's on fire within the Northumberland Strait. What is the Northumberland Strait? It is a body of water that separates Prince Edward Island from Nova Scotia and New Brunswick in eastern Canada. Now you all know some Canadian geography. I'm so proud of you. The story dates back over 200 years when people started reporting a beautiful schooner catching fire and being engulfed in flames as people watched from shore. Anyone who has ever attempted a rescue mission finds that the ship completely disappears before they can reach it. Apparently the ship shows up before a northeast wind, forewarning terrible storms. Some say it's just an example of St. Elmo's fire, a rare weather condition involving the ionization of air molecules in order to produce a faint glow, but those who have seen the ship ablaze say that it was much too bright to be explained away like that. The prevailing story is that a pirate made a pact with the devil to protect and hide his treasure, and in return, he and his crew would sail forever on the burning ship. A pact was made as the ship was burning down and would soon sink along with the treasure. In the end, folks claim that their fate was revenge for the terrible deeds they had done in their days of piracy, like their own personal floating hell. Coming in at number 2, we have Baron Falkenberg, a tale of lovers scorned, brothers bashed, and dice rolled. This pirate haunts Germany's North Sea and has been for over 600 years. Baron Falkenberg was a relatively wealthy member of high society, planning to propose to the village's most beautiful maiden. Then his long-lost brother returned with newly found riches and proposed to her first. At the wedding, the Baron became so upset with his brother that he clubbed him over the head with a bottle of champagne. Classy. Naturally, the brother dropped dead. Seeing this, his bride ran away, claiming that she'd rather die than be with the Baron. Ouch. So the Baron did what any rational fratricidal maniac would do, and stabbed her in the heart. How romantic. Then he ran away to the beach where he was accosted by a shady man on a boat. This mysterious figure invited him to the ship where he came from, which was anchored offshore a little ways out. The Baron accepted and rowed his way to the Great Grey Behemoth. Since entering, nobody has seen him disembark, and he's been at sea for centuries. The ship he boarded always seems to be heading due north, and flickers of blue flame. Some passersby claim to have seen the Baron himself playing dice with the devil in order to take back control of his soul. Unfortunately, it appears to be very difficult to win a game of chance against the devil. An additional caveat that can be added is that there are those who will claim that the story of the Baron is also connected to a Norse ghost story. The story tells the tale of a Viking sea captain who stole a magic ring from the gods. As punishment for his crimes, he was turned into a living skeleton covered in fire, condemned to spend the rest of eternity affixed to the mast of a ghostly longship. Whether the two stories are about the same ship, it's hard to say. However, I think we can all agree that a flaming skeleton pirate is pretty badass. And finally at number 1, we have the Flying Dutchman. We saved the most well known for last. The legendary ghost ship is said to glow with ghostly light as it sails the 7 seas. It will attempt to send messages to land or to people long dead if hailed. Unfortunately, nobody really wants to hail this ship, as the sight of it is seen to be a portent of doom. Like most ghostly ships, the Dutchman can never make port and is doomed to sail the oceans forever. It's theorized that the spectral seafarer had been rounding the treacherous Cape of Good Hope when it encountered a sudden storm. The hatches were battened down and the captain swore he would push right through come hell or high water, and it turns out a little bit of both were on the menu. For his recklessness with his ship and crew, the captain was divinely punished. He was condemned to sail the seas for eternity, serving as a warning to other mariners of bad weather and the cost of hubris. Sightings of the Dutchman have been reported since the 18th century, with many notable scallywags and scurvy dogs laying eyes on the ghastly vessel. Even Prince George of Wales described seeing a ship glowing with a strange light. If you see a ship with skeletons dancing in the rigging, steer clear. It might look like fun, but the captain will try to lure other vessels onto the rocks to ensure nobody else can pass the cape. Sheesh. Remind me not to take a long sailing trip.
Number 5. The Plague Doctor. SCP-049 is a humanoid-ish entity. Around 6'2" in height, it bears the exact appearance of a medieval plague doctor. 49 appears to be wearing thick robes and a ceramic mask, indicative of the time and occupation. However, the garments aren't garments at all, but skin. Yeah. 49's body over time is now indistinguishable from its previous human form. 49 was discovered during an investigation after a number of unknown disappearances in South France. During a raid, investigators found 49's lab and what their, quote, specialty is. Law enforcement busted in as 49 sat and watched the officers as they took pictures of the so-called torturous mad science lab it had created. Yeah, you don't want to know about the experiments they were doing. 49 willingly entered the Foundation's custody after that, which is creepy in itself. Some sort of sinister agenda, maybe. 49 has a humanoid skeletal skull beneath the outer layer, and the Doctor talks in many tongues. It prefers Old English or medieval French. While 49 is generally cordial and cooperative with the Foundation staff, it can be extremely irritated and aggressive if it feels the presence of pestilence, hence the disappearance during the pandemic. It will become hostile with people it deems as sick. Cold, flu, or under the weather, 49 is going to generally attempt to study anybody if they're showing signs of infection. 49 causes failure of biological functions of any organism it touches through direct skin contact. How this occurs is currently unknown, and autopsies of 49's victims has been inconclusive. The pestilence is what seems to drive the Doctor to live, though will usually aim to perform crude surgeries on living specimens using implements of an unknown era contained within a black, ominous doctor's bag. Yeah. Their journals are not written in any known language, and attempts by linguists and codebreakers to decipher them have been unsuccessful. While these surgeries are not always successful, they often result in some sort of morbid creation. Okay, so this doctor is like wanted. Apparently after a botched dissection of an orangutan, the Doctor has yet again breached containment seeking specimens for research. Investigators need your help to find them. If you see a plague doctor roaming the streets, make sure you first off keep 6 feet of distance if you have a cold. That's all I'm saying, you know? And call the Foundation. Number 4. The Water Nymph. Yeah, we're not talking about Ariel from The Little Mermaid. SCP-054 has breached containment, and we're not really sure if we're ever going to be able to find her again. Out of the water, the subject most often appears as a female humanoid with an unearthly bodily volume of 90 liters of liquid, made entirely of water. Yeah, you'd be able to see her if she's out of the water. She's pretty massive. When she enters a body of water, however, which they think she's retreated to, she becomes next to invisible. Yeah, like pouring a glass of water into another glass of water. That's not good. The subject must periodically return to a body of water in order to maintain its volume due to evaporation. Okay, so maybe global warming could actually help us here. Initially found in a classified lake, she was moved to the Foundation indefinitely. Initially curious about the Foundation personnel and what their mandate for the human race is, it's documented she seemed to enjoy interacting and studying staff, mimicking their forms, learning our languages, and understanding our way of life. She was held in a watertight isolation room outfitted with specialized climate control equipment, a massive fountain filled with water in a rather homely facility. Maintenance personnel are required to wear PPE at all times inside the containment area and must spend at least 10 minutes in a special drying room after exiting. As documented with her last breach, the surrounding area was evacuated and the enclosure was flushed with liquid nitrogen, freezing every molecule of water in it. However, no nymph. Yeah, that's not good. No thermal, electromagnetic, biological, or other phenomenon has been detected in its body that would suggest how it lives or thrives. The last experiment with 54 was halted after 2 researchers were seriously injured when she exhibited signs of mistrust and aggression, and all of a sudden she pulled the researchers under where they almost drowned. She has been updated to a new class system, and authorities are still searching for her. Yeah, you might need the Navy on this one. How would you even be able to see her? Well, I guess goggles and a snorkel. So, number 3, the homunculus. SCP-030's appearance is that of a hairless, genderless, gray-toned humanoid, 28 inches in height and weighing around 25 pounds. Its solid blue eyes lack discernible irises or pupils and resemble small sapphires. 30 possesses an androgynous voice with a pronounced English accent. It is able to converse, read, and write in ancient Greek, Latin, Italian, English, as well as 2 additional languages that have yet to be identified. Well, that's absolutely terrifying. 30 has also demonstrated knowledge of physics, chemistry, astronomy, mathematics, roughly equivalent to that of a 17th century academic. 30 has demonstrated knowledge on these topics involving classified science. 30 needs at least 15 lumens of light or greater, or it becomes unconscious and showing no signs of life. Okay, that's a good note. Maybe we can use that to find them. Within 5 to 10 seconds of being re-exposed to light, 30 becomes active, appearing to be coming out of a sleep state no matter how long the period of inactivity has been. 30 does not require sleep and has expressed a desire to remain awake as often as possible. I wonder why. 30 requests new materials for personal research every 90 days, and all materials are to be collected and destroyed prior to delivery of the new materials. All materials are to be evaluated, and 30 is to be absolutely under no circumstance granted access to any modern scientific journals or texts. Apparently 30 has become untrusting and escaped the Foundation's perimeter after learning there has been more updated scientific study since the mid-1600s. Alright, who let it slip, huh? Was it you? Might be Chris, I think it was. 30 is now on a scientific learning spree, and who knows what they're gonna learn in that time. Somebody turn the lights on this thing, okay? We need like a week-long eclipse so we can find them. Number 2, antimatter. SCP-213 is an adolescent humanoid male, 4'9", tall, weighing 200 pounds. 213 is able to forcefully sever the bonds between atoms and any solid matter with physical contact. An intense flash of light is produced while doing this. 213 can use any body part of its body to manifest this effect, and has used it to disintegrate projectiles as they impact its body. Yeah, that's like shooting BBs at a bear. This effect has proven to be extremely painful for 213 with extended use. 213 was just recovered from California when reports of a teenage boy arrested for homicide after vaporizing his girlfriend. Yeah, that sounds like the start to an X-Men episode. Agents in the local police department arrested and contained him as soon as authorities were called. Investigation revealed 213 holds anomalous properties that are yet to be understood by our knowledge of modern physics. During the initial containment and arrest, 213 vaporized 2 agents attempting to secure him. 213 was contained in a high-security humanoid containment cell within a classified floor of Site 77. Yeah, major stuff. 213 should not be emotionally triggered during containment. Manifestation of its nuclear effect was on its brink when authorities reached the cell. During a routine physical examination, lesions were discovered on the back. There are 4 nodules now placed in a perfect square. A follow-up examination has led to the discovery of 2 more nodules located in the center of its palms. With the recent investigation, agents have deemed 213 to be evolving, and now a Keter classification. During the escape, 213 vaporized 2 more guards after having a seizure in its containment cell, after a quote, implosion. The matter surrounding its body and the molecules around it have vanished. If you have any further information surrounding a glowing radioactive teenage boy around town, just call the Foundation immediately, would you? And number 1, Baba Yaga. SCP-352 appears to be a very old, very emaciated woman of unknown age and race. 352 speaks Russian, but with an accent and dialect that makes translation very difficult. 352 is extremely unwilling to communicate, with mostly threats or statements of revenge. Yeah, she's mean. 352 has never identified herself by name, and due to her aggressive nature, it has been impossible to determine any background information. 352 possesses a level of strength and speed much higher than what should be possible for any person of her perceived age and physical dimensions, moving things of 500 pounds with little effort and moving at speeds in excess of 70 kilometers an hour. That's fast. 352 can recover from lethal wounds, including decapitation and disembowelment. Regeneration can take between days to several weeks depending on the severity. Internally, 352 appears to be a normal human woman with muscles, bones, and organs, but after recent testing was done on a tissue sample, she's capable of growing a hair-like cilia anywhere on her body at will. They have been observed crawling along floors and even up walls and ceilings. These hairs are sticky, identical to the enzymes in our saliva. This enzyme reacts on contact with human tissue and rapidly attacks the nervous system. Symptoms include hallucinations, euphoria, suppression of logical thinking, and suppression of pain receptors. She appears to be a carnivore with a strong preference, unfortunately, for human flesh. 352 will create a giant web of hair and saliva and just wait for their prey to become trapped and docile. 352 was last seen in her web inside the containment cell. Researchers were studying her cilia-like hair when they became entranced and were found limbless in a quite happy state. Her last location is unknown. Yeah, she's obviously the number 1 spot, of course. She's a spider witch on the loose. Yeah, that's definitely gonna get the FBI's attention. Apparently, reports of an enchanted forest and a witch who have caused several deaths have surfaced in Russia yet again. Foundation agents are on scene, and apparently the forest has become more of a lair. Yeah, awesome. So there's a half spider, half witch with superhuman strength just dragging people up walls and into enchanted forests. Okay. Yeah, this sounds like Stan Lee's gonna need to help us out on this one. What do you think?
Number 5, the Mary Celeste. Our first entry on the list of ghost ships today is the story of the Mary Celeste, a ghost ship where the crew abandoned it for a reason no one knows. In 1872, the captain, one Benjamin Briggs, cast off out of New York's docks to travel to Italy. On board were the captain, his wife, their young daughter, and a small crew of 8 seasoned sailors coming with them. The voyage seemed like a success until it was found by another ship, the Del Gratia. The crew of the Del Gratia approached the Celeste since it was barreling forward at full speed and full sail without anybody manning the crew. So the Del Gratia boarded it to investigate and found more questions than they had before, as there was barely a sign of life. If they hadn't found it freely floating, they would have assumed the ship had just been built. There was a little bit of water in the hold and a lifeboat was missing, but other than that, the ship was fully intact. The hull undamaged, the hold replete with food and water and other supplies. So what happened? Why would the captain and the crew abandon a perfectly serviceable, well-stocked ship, especially one that was carrying his own family? Now, there have been theories over the course of the years. Piracy is a fairly common suggestion, suggesting they were attacked, but if the ship had been raided, why did they leave all the food and water behind and leave the ship freely floating? It's not like a pirate to leave anything valuable behind, anything at all. The ship was still on course to their destination, and the logbook found on board stated that the Mary Celeste was on the right path, so what happened there? They were going the right way. It's worth mentioning that before this strange occurrence, the Mary Celeste already had a checkered history. It was originally known as the Amazon before Jeff Bezos sued. No. It was the Amazon, but it was given a new name after a series of mishaps led crews to believe it was a cursed ship. The first captain died of an extreme sickness, and on one of the first voyages, the Amazon crashed into another ship. So it was renamed the Mary Celeste, hoping perhaps that a new name and a coat of paint could salvage its reputation. If only that was the case. The Celeste was recovered and sailed a few more years before being run down for insurance purposes, and to date, no one knows what ever became of Benjamin Briggs and his crew. And if you're looking for more ghost stories, not necessarily nautical, but ghost stories of any variety, Top 5 Scary has loads of that and then some. We've got just about everything freaky you can think of. So click on through and hit subscribe. Please make sure you hit that bell. But would you kindly do that at the end of this video, because I got way more stories about haunted ships coming up for you right now.
let's get back into it. Number 4, the Jenny. Way back in the era of exploration, when ships sailed across the sea, the South Pole was one of the most treacherous passes an explorer could make, and countless sailors sailed their last expedition around the Antarctic. One such ship is a small schooner called the Jenny. Now, we really don't know much about this ship, the purpose of its original mission, really even who was sailing on it. What we know of the Jenny comes from the post-mortem, when it was found discovered by a whaling ship in the year 1860. The Hope was sailing through when it spotted a battered schooner, beaten but somehow still sailing around, passing narrowly through the gap between two icebergs. The crew of the Hope closed in. This was quite an odd sight. They recognized the English flag atop the mast and assumed the ship was in grave danger and needed immediate assistance, so they sailed on forward. They saw 7 men standing on the deck, although they looked gravely underdressed for the weather conditions and not particularly active at all. These guys were sort of just chilling out up there. It wasn't until the Hope sailed close enough that they realized the men they were looking at on the Jenny weren't just sluggish, but they were frozen remains. Frozen in place, as if they'd been frozen flash solid, as if it happened in an instant. They appeared to be in mostly good condition. I know that sounds incredibly bizarre to say that about a corpse, but they weren't showing signs of decomposition or any physical injuries. The Hope's captain, Captain Brighton, boarded the Jenny to try and understand what was going on here. He went underneath the decks and found a man slumped over a barrel with a journal in his hands. Brighton went up to touch him, but realized immediately, like everyone else, he had been frozen in place. So he pried the journal from his cold, dead hands and read the last chilling entry. Chilling. I didn't even mean to say that. That was a little pun. That's what my comedy degree paid for. May 4th, 1823. No food for 71 days. I am the last one alive. If the log was to be believed, then that would mean the crew had been sailing as corpses aimlessly for decades, as if not a day had passed. Captain Brighton took the journal home with him to return one day. And tragically, the wife of the Jenny's captain was found dead in the bedroom cabin alongside the ship's dog. The Hope sailed off with nothing more than the journal and left the Jenny floating across the frozen water, where she may still be to this day, or perhaps she's plunged deep beneath the water. Wherever she is, I hope those men found some peace and hopefully some food. Number 3, the Orang Medan. That's a fun name. In the 1940s, there was a widespread story about a ship named the SS Orang Medan that had exploded near Indonesia, and its entire crew was found dead under mysterious circumstances. That's a pretty good ghost story. And like any good ghost story, there's a number of variants depending on who's heard what. Some claim that the Medan was attacked by a boarding party of rabid pirates, modern-day buccaneers. Others claim that it was smuggling dangerous secret chemicals that poisoned the crew and caused the ship to explode. And of course, we're on Top 5 Scary. I love wild speculation, so I'll say I think aliens did it, and who are you to tell me I'm wrong? It could be something paranormal. Interestingly, despite this story being so widespread and repeated, there doesn't actually appear to be many records of this ship. So did it really exist? Or was the whole thing just a ghost story altogether? It's believed that the ship was passing through the Strait of Malacca during the 1940s, and one of its first references was that of a passing ship that was said to have picked up a radio signal coming from the Medan, reading out the very creepy message of, "We float. All officers, including the captain, dead in the chart room and on the bridge. Probably whole of crew dead. I die." That's something out of a Stephen King book, man. The vessel was an American ship called the Silver Star, and it went out to investigate probably the scariest message you could ever get at sea. What they found, they couldn't have prepared themselves for. The entire crew was dead with, I quote, "teeth bared, with their upturned faces to the sun, staring as if in fear." The ship's dog had died too. But most bizarre was that none of these bodies showed any signs of a physical struggle. Some believe the ship had been carrying toxic materials and poisoned the crew, and that seems possible, but honestly, given off of what I just read, that sounds way more like it's supernatural. I think demons were involved. If you've ever seen the movie Event Horizon, this seems a lot like it was an Event Horizon situation. Number 2, the Young Teaser. So they called me in high school. Unlike a lot of other ships on this list that had served as merchant vessels, the Young Teaser, true to its name, was a bit of a wild card rebel as far as ships go, and was a notorious pirate schooner flying the black flag and was famous for its speeds. The Young Teaser had made a name for itself as a dangerous ship around Mahone Bay, notable for several successful raids, which is a lot easier said than done. I don't know if you've ever tried to board an enemy ship, it's very complicated. A whole lot wrong can happen on the ocean, and in the year of 1813, the teaser had met a match it couldn't outplay, when it was cornered by a Nova Scotian officer by the name of Sir John Sherbrooke. Sherbrooke was a decorated military officer. He was a veteran of the War of 1812 and was looking to continue his path of glory, get another medal on the chest, by capturing the teaser and its crew and bringing them back to the crown to face justice for years of plundering. Sherbrooke was ready to board the teaser, but he noticed that a privateer aboard it had already begun lighting their own ship on fire. Instead, the pirates had chosen to go up in flames rather than face the noose back in England. Now, a pirate choosing death before capture isn't the most wild story. I'd wager a lot more pirates did that than Jack Sparrow would have you believe, but it's how the teaser's legacy carries on that gives it a spot on this list. Ask a Nova Scotian around the bay and they might tell you one of their more famous ghost stories, that on June 27th of every year, the otherwise peaceful Mahone Bay is overcome by fog, smoke, and the curdling screams of the damned crew whose souls are still trapped in the bay. They say on a real foggy night you can see the burning ship still sailing through. Some people even saying they see spectral sailors hanging off the riggings. Some boaters say that they see the ship charging towards them as if it was still marauding out and about, only when it's about to crash into another ship, it vanishes into thin air, leaving behind a cloud of smoke and fog in its place as if it was never there. And number 1, the Carol Deering. Now, we've been talking about ghost ships this whole video, and weird things that have happened to ships going missing, but we've yet to bring up my favorite anomalous triangle outside of Bermuda. So let's fix that, eh? Let's talk about the ghost ship, the Carol A. Deering. It was 1929, and the Deering was returning home from the Hamptons to Barbados, passing a Cape Lookout lightship. A man on the lightship called out to the Deering because he thought the crew looked aimless. They told him that the Carol Deering had lost its anchors, which, I don't know if you know a lot about ships, that's a bad thing for a ship to lose. The Carol Deering kept making its way forward. I guess the lightship didn't have any anchors to lend out or anything, where it was spotted again a few days later by a ship called the SS Lake Elon, with its captain reporting that the behavior of the Carol Deering was very odd. He described it as steering a peculiar course. And that would be the last time anyone saw the crew of the Carol Deering alive. 2 days later, the Carol Deering was discovered by the Coast Guard washed up on a nearby shore. The ship was missing its lifeboats and the decks were flooded. A rescue crew went in to investigate and were baffled by what they found. The ship had been picked clean. It was missing all its documents, all important equipment, belongings. It was stripped to the walls. The lifeboats and anchors were all gone, and there wasn't a single sign of life in the ship, with the exception of one oddity: a beautiful feast laid out for the entire crew that had been untouched. Not a nibble taken out of it. No one knows what became of the crew of the Deering. There's always been theories. Some people think maybe they mutinied against their captain and fled. Some people think they were taken by the mystery of the Bermuda Triangle. Was their ship stolen? Or maybe they all just went home. We might never know. You let me know your theories down below in the comments. Starting off with number 5, SCP-049, the Plague Doctor. Whenever the Foundation releases press junkets or entertains visitors, SCP-049 always proves to be a popular one. It actually even gets a fair share of mail. SCP-049 is a Euclid-class object resembling a humanoid male, standing an impressive 6'2" and bearing the resemblance of a medieval plague doctor. Rather fascinatingly and disturbingly, it isn't actually wearing an outfit or a garb. Its outward appearance seemingly has grown organically from SCP-049's body, similar to hair or fingernails. Its mask is a chitinous structure. X-rays have shown that SCP-049 does contain a humanoid skeleton, with the interesting exception of a beak protruding from the skull. SCP-049 has been shown to communicate clearly with Foundation members in a variety of spoken languages, although its preferred dialects are an archaic form of medieval French and modern-day English. It is generally ambivalent to Foundation researchers and staff, but it has been shown to experience bouts of great emotional distress and aggravation should it feel the presence of something it refers to as the pestilence nearby. Now, what the pestilence is unclear, but it is of immense concern to SCP-049. Now, just to be advised, this next information could be a bit unsettling to some viewers. Rest assured that this entity is being held very tightly under Foundation watch. When SCP-049 feels that something has become infected by this pestilence, it will work to remove it by first flatlining the biological object merely through a touch of direct skin, causing all biological functions to cease immediately. Usually in observation, SCP-049 then performs a crude surgery on its victims, using a black bag of tools that it carries with it. The victims are then reanimated, becoming an instance that we've dubbed SCP-049-2. These reanimated objects are shown to be sluggish, operating with poor motor skills, and generally are inactive. They don't seem to be too sentient unless commandeered by SCP-049. They have been shown to be quite aggressive though, and autopsies have revealed bizarre physiology that doesn't correlate with any medical knowledge found in these instances of SCP-049-2. Despite their condition, however, SCP-049 refers to these entities as cured. SCP-049 is contained within a standard human containment cell and is provided a corpse of a large mammal once every 2 weeks for study as long as it maintains good behavior. Human contact is explicitly forbidden to all Foundation and non-Foundation personnel. And my viewers, if you're looking for more SCP content, well, we've got a very well-stocked archive just waiting for you here on Top 5 Scary and a whole lot more. Click through, subscribe, and stay safe and stay informed. Number 4. SCP-166, the reindeer. SCP-166 is a Euclid-class object, manifesting as a human female, although one that appears to share more with ungulates than humans. It has large antlers stemming from its head, hooved feet, and a small bushy tail most closely resembling a reindeer. All containment staff interacting with SCP-166 in any regard are to be equipped with biohazard suits at all times when interacting with her in Containment Zone C in Site-19, which has been modified to include a hermetically sealed chamber. Now, due to SCP-166's unique anatomy, the Foundation provides her with her own loose-fitting organic clothing, with a new set being distributed each month. Interestingly, SCP-166 is to be tended to exclusively by female staff, as there appears to be some sort of hypnotic aura present on male staff members around her, who we've noticed develop an unhealthy compulsive obsession manifesting in various ways, from a sexual lust to aggression to a nurturing desire to protect. Over 70% of males recorded interacting with her for any periods of longer than a few minutes have developed these symptoms. Quite interestingly, SCP-166 is emotionally distraught by this, and she doesn't seem to understand what anomalous ability that is causing this. We've recorded that when within a 15-meter radius of SCP-166, artificial objects return to an unworked state. What this means in layman's term is that she has an incredibly powerful regression aura. Take for example, a mobile phone. It's a very complicated piece of electronics, but any common cellular phone from any major manufacturer will experience all of its metallic components decay almost immediately. Stone buildings, products made of organic materials decay at a virtually imperceptible rate. Fascinatingly, within this regression radius though, plant life begins to sprout seemingly in impossible places out of machinery or a place with no soil to speak of. In fact, SCP-166's entire existence seems to suggest some sort of rejection of man-made substances. It has an increased sensitivity to just about any artificial materials or pollutants, with inhalation of these things causing ulcers and acute asthma attacks. SCP-166 was discovered in relatively sheltered conditions. An agent of another organization I'm not at liberty to mention discovered her and was tasked with flatlining the object, but instead chose to smuggle it to a Catholic convent, where it would live unbothered in secret for a decade, until being spotted by a visitor, wherein our Foundation was contacted, and the object has now been recovered and is treated properly. Number 3. SCP-682, the reptile. SCP-682 is a Keter-class object and might very well be the most destructive force currently in Foundation care, and one of our most difficult to contain. SCP-682 manifests as a humongous reptilian creature of unknown origin. Despite its outwards unbecoming appearance, the creature has been shown to be extremely intelligent and is able to communicate complex thoughts with other entities. It is outwardly incredibly aggressive, with a hatred for life in the truest definition of the word. It is enraged by the sight and concept of living beings. SCP-682 has proven unimaginably durable, showing extremely high strength, speed, reflexes, and heightened thought level. It's capable of changing mass rapidly, growing or decreasing in size as it sees fit, as it consumes or sheds material. It's able to process energy from just about everything it consumes, organic or otherwise. And most concerningly, the entity is shown to regenerate at such a rapid rate that any injuries it sustains have little to no effect. Within minutes, they are reverted. Even when near death, SCP-682 is not deterred. It's been recorded still speaking, still acting with aggression, with over 87% of its body matter destroyed. Previous attempts to use other SCPs in a bid to try and destroy the object proved fruitless. This is why it's a Keter-class object, and one of the few objects we are seeking to destroy outright. It's currently contained in a 5x5x5 meter chamber with reinforced acid-resistant steel plate lining the cell walls, and this chamber is perpetually pumped with hydrochloric acid in an attempt to slow the entity down. All personnel are forbidden from making any contact with SCP-682 unless explicit written permission has been made, in order to avoid provoking SCP into a fit of rage. When it does breach containment, teams of highly trained MTF units are sent out in numbers no less than 7. As of this recording, there have been 17 attempted breaches, one of the highest in Foundation records. But we catch it every time. Number 2. SCP-811, the Swamp Monster. SCP-811 is a Euclid-class object manifesting as another human female with a mottled green skin color, disproportionately long limbs, and a thin physiology with a slightly bloated abdomen. It stands approximately 5.5 feet tall, weighing just under 47 kilograms. We believe that its green skin provided it with some sort of camouflage effect when living in its natural habitat among the swamps. It has extremely dirty, greasy black hair that is either naturally resistant to any chemical cleaning agents, or it is so accumulated in brine and filth that we are unable to remove it. We've observed that oils, sweat, and fluid produced from SCP-811 act as skin irritants, but not in any lasting manner. It shows a rudimentary understanding of humans, language, and socialization, but it's more akin to feral children that have been recorded as living in the wild, such as Victor of Averon. It has a very rudimentary understanding of what we do. SCP-811 is constantly secreting a clear green tinted mucus, which causes organic matter that comes into contact with it to rapidly decompose at a worrying rate. Though, through processes not completely understood, the matter affected will be reduced into a viscous, unknown black sludge. The SCP then absorbs this black substance through its pores, and biopsies have shown that this black sludge is running through its entire circulatory system, so whether or not we think it's its blood is up for debate. This next bit of information is a bit crass, I will warn you. SCP-811 does not defecate traditionally and lacks any sort of digestive tract. Instead, it processes this black substance into a tar, which it then voids by a projectile regurgitation, which it uses when hunting, spraying at the face of its target or any open wounds, resulting in asphyxiation or bacterial infection. SCP-811 is kept in a climate-controlled glass enclosure filled with wetland soil and stagnant water, furnished with a variety of aquatic plants from its native region, which I am not at liberty to disclose. Good behavior is rewarded with rich soil and new logs of manageable size. SCP-811 proves to be very popular with new researchers and especially younger men. The Foundation would like to take this time to remind all viewers that despite SCP-811's outward appearance, it is still an ambush predator and has been shown on some occasions to surprise, so to speak, unexpecting, inexperienced researchers. Number 1. SCP-783, the Crooked Man. SCP-783 is a Keter-class object manifesting itself as an incredibly aggressive, hostile entity currently preying upon residents of Tembe, a rural hamlet in Oxfordshire, England. Because of the nature of the entity and its acting aggression, a few key buildings in Tembe have been converted into Foundation monitoring field stations. An unsuspecting building near a local hospital, as well as 2 other quiet domiciles I'm not at liberty to say, have been converted into frontline MTF stations. SCP-783 has proven rather difficult to capture, and as of this recording, it's still currently eluding proper containment. Its exact physical description has yet to be ascertained, as well as the full nature of its abilities. The only data we have to work with is its targets, although we currently don't have any consistent pattern found with the victims, and as such have yet to be able to prevent an attack or provide any assistance to victims of SCP-783. Any building where a target of SCP-783 is currently residing will experience a degradation of materials. Outwardly, the building collapses, crumbles, and cracks, giving a crooked appearance. This crooked effect extends to any biological entity entering the anomalous interior, causing immediate horrific deformation that is critically damaging. We have a few images of bodies recovered, and I will warn you, they can be a bit upsetting. Victims of 783 are shown to have severe deformations across the bone structure, a result of dozens upon dozens of small hairline fractures in the long bones, and these limbs have been stretched past the point of human normalcy. These give the victims a crooked, gnarled appearance. Despite these injuries, however, most victims unfortunately remain alive after an SCP-783 attack, although rendered fully paralyzed or in vegetative states. We currently have 27 living residents in our condition in our critical but stable care. The residents of Tembe seem fully aware of the entity's presence, and the children have even been recorded singing an off-putting nursery rhyme telling of the legend. I'll share it with you here. There lived a crooked man who made a crooked deal. He kept a crooked cane and his catch in crooked creel. He stole a crooked child who cried a crooked squeal, and that crooked little man was broken on the wheel.
Number 5 on this list is Julia. According to Wikipedia, Julia is a sound recorded on March 1st, 1999 by the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. NOAA said the source of the sound was most likely likely a large iceberg that had run aground off Antarctica. It was large enough to be heard over the entire equatorial Pacific Ocean autonomous hydrophone array with a duration of about 2 minutes and 43 seconds. Due to the uncertainty of the arrival azimuth, the point of origin could only be narrowed to between Bransford Straits and Cape Adar. The most accepted explanation is that a massive iceberg scraped along the ground, but in truth, it could be anything. This was a one-off sound, so we'll likely never know for sure, but an iceberg, a massive animal, some underground volcanoes, maybe even tectonic plates shifting, all of these are potential explanations for why this sound may have come about, and none of them are great. This sound was huge, and if this is what it sounds like for tectonic plates to shift, then they're probably shifting around in ways that we don't really need them to be doing right now. Also, there was a rumor that NASA had photographs of the body of water that was suspected, and that there was a massive shadow in it. People believe that they may have been able to capture a photo of some giant creature down there, but don't want to reveal such information to the public. If the creature is as big as people think, then I kinda understand why. Number 4 on this list is the upsweep. Schneider writes, upsweep is an unidentified sound that's existed at least since the Pacific Marine Environmental Laboratory began recording SOSUS, an underwater sound surveillance system with listening stations around the world in 1991. The sound consists of a long train of narrow band upsweeping sounds of several seconds duration each, the laboratory reports. The source location is difficult to identify, but it's in the Pacific around the halfway point between Australia and South America. Upsweep changes with the seasons, becoming loudest in spring and autumn, though it isn't clear why. The leading theory is that it's related to volcanic activity. This sound or signal is very unique because it keeps coming back and changes with the weather. Frankly, I don't really understand how this could possibly be related to volcanic activity because the season is dictating how loud or soft the noise is. Why would the fact that we're in fall change anything about a volcano's activity and therefore the sound? Is it possible that this explanation is just an explanation of convenience, and the fact of the matter is no one really has any idea why this is happening? Or maybe even worse, they do know why it's happening and are just covering it up anyways. Number 3 on this list is the hum. The hum is one of the most interesting signals from the deep ocean that we've ever run into. Caitlin Schneider writes, the hum has been recorded on several occasions, mostly during the last 50 years or so. In these cases, there have been reports of a relentless and troubling low-frequency humming noise that can only be heard by a certain portion of the population. It's difficult to pinpoint when instances of the hum began, but it's been well documented since the 1970s, and since then, cases have popped up all over the world, from Ontario, Canada, to Taos, New Mexico, to Bristol, England, to Largs, Scotland, and Auckland, New Zealand. In most instances, the affected group only makes up 2% of the population, but for those individuals, the hum is largely inescapable and impossible to track. Those affected report never having heard noises before and say the hum is generally heard indoors and becomes louder at night. It's also most common in rural and suburban areas and among people between age 55 and 70. Scientists have long investigated the cause of the drone, occasionally tracing it to industrial equipment emitting particular frequencies. For the most part though, the sound has left the world completely puzzled. The list of other possible culprits is long and wide-ranging. Wireless communication devices, power or gas lines, electromagnetic radiation, radio waves, earth tremors, or the ocean are all suspects. Because the hum appears and disappears, and because the cause may vary from case to case, the phenomenon still baffles researchers. At this point, a few things are clear. The hum is real and likely a byproduct of 21st century living. They think that this sound might come from the ocean, but they're also really not that sure. This is one of those ones that just really doesn't make any sense. Caitlin writes at the end there that it might be a product of 21st century living, but I frankly don't understand that. How is our way of living causing this hum to come from the ocean all around the globe at totally random times? Also, why is it that people from the ages of 55 to 70 are more affected by this? It's stuff like this that reminds me that we aren't as smart as we think we are. Sometimes I think that we're so advanced that we have it all figured out, but then I'm reminded that there's just this massive hum that occasionally happens which nobody knows why. What it means or what it could do is all a mystery, which honestly adds to the scare factor. Number 2 on this list is skyquakes. So when you hear skyquakes, you probably don't think that they have anything to do with the water, but they actually do. Caitlin Schneider says that skyquakes or unexplained sonic booms have been heard around the world for the last 200 years or so, usually near bodies of water. These head scratchers have been reported on the Ganges in India, the East Coast and inland Finger Lakes of the US, near the North Sea, and in Australia, Japan, and Italy. The sounds, which has been described as mimicking massive thunder or cannon fire, has been chalked up to everything from meteors entering the atmosphere to gas escaping from vents in the Earth's surface, or the gas exploding after being trapped underwater as a result of biological decay, to earthquakes, military aircraft, underwater caves collapsing, and even a possible byproduct of solar and or Earth-based magnetic activity. So there's a lot of explanations there, but I want to circle back to the one about gas getting trapped underwater. Apparently the gas gets trapped and then causes an explosion. Well, what if a ton of gas gets trapped? What if so much gas gets trapped that the explosion doesn't just cause a sound, but actually causes a catastrophic event? It leads to a huge tsunami that just wipes out an entire city. If this is the explanation for the sound, then I don't see why that isn't possible. Which would mean that whenever we hear such a thing, it's just a potential natural disaster waiting to happen. All that makes it a pretty scary sound if you ask me. And finally, number 1 is the bloop. Potentially one of the most infamous sounds ever recorded from the ocean, the bloop has kept experts guessing for years. In 1997, a super low frequency but massively powerful sound was heard in multiple spots around the globe. Experts think that it originated off the coast of South Africa, but are not 100% sure. The fact that it was heard repeatedly over and over again during the summer of 1997, but then was never heard of after that. No one really knows what caused this massive sound, and maybe the most terrifying part is that scientists haven't ruled out something organic. Something organic means something living. A massive creature that would break records for anything that we've ever seen before. Far larger than a blue whale, the largest known creature on the planet. This would be groundbreaking if it was something organic and would totally change the way we look at the ocean. Conspiracy theorists have thought that the government does know what it is and is actually keeping it under wraps for fear of how the public will respond. Some people even believe that it might be Cthulhu, the ancient god written about in the Lovecraftian universe. Now once again, the most accepted explanation is that of a massive iceberg scraping the ground, but if that's what caused it, then why did it keep happening over and over again? Comment down below what you guys think is the true cause of this bloop, because I truly have no idea.
In at number 5, underwater river. Within the ocean, there was a river found, and it's known as the Black Sea Undersea River. This discovery was the first of its kind in the entire world at the time and was found in August of 2010. The underwater river is saline water flowing through the Bosporus Strait and along the seabed of the Black Sea. Before this discovery, scientists had previously found channels running along the ocean floor based on sonar screening. One of the largest is from the mouth of the Amazon River into the Atlantic Ocean and found off the coast of Greenland, the Congo, and Bengal. It was believed that these channels could possibly function as rivers. It was this discovery specifically that truly proved their theory correct. This river functions due to the salty ocean water spilling through the Bosporus Strait from the Mediterranean Sea into the Black Sea, where the water has a lower salt content. The largest of these rivers are several miles wide and run for thousands of miles out into the deep ocean, and they proved to be vital to the creatures living in and around them. In many ways, these underwater rivers are very similar to rivers we see on land. They have banks on either side, and smaller rivers feed into the larger ones. These rivers carve valleys into the sea floor, and they follow certain paths and can even change course. Due to the power and unpredictability of these rivers, they have been extremely difficult to explore and learn more about. Researchers tend to send down recording instruments and robotic submarines to try and learn more about these rivers. Sedimentologist Dan Parsons says that these rivers are incredibly powerful and have destructive flows, so it's important we understand how they work. If it was a river on the surface of the earth, then it was ranked as the 6th largest river in the world. This discovery is truly an amazing natural wonder, and because they are so hard to research, study, and learn about, it's an incredible phenomenon. In at number 4, we have Great Blue Hole. The Great Blue Hole is located in Belize and is truly a wonder. The hole is a natural sinkhole with surrounding corals and shallow water accounting for the perfect circle shape and deep blue color. It lies near the center of Lighthouse Reef, and it was formed during several occurrences of quaternary glaciation when the sea levels were much lower. Fun fact about the lighthouse reef can actually be seen from space, and the Great Blue Hole is near the center of it and can see it so clearly from so far away. This site was made famous by Jacques Cousteau, who declared it one of the top 5 scuba diving sites in the world. It was first discovered in 1971 and then explored much more during an expedition in 1997 to collect core sample from the Blue Hole's floor and document the cave system. In December 2018, 2 submarines descended into the Blue Hole to be able to map its interior, and using solar scanning they were able to make a 3D map of the 1,000-foot wide hole. They had discovered that there was a layer of hydrogen sulfide around 300 feet down. The Great Blue Hole has its name for a reason. It is extremely deep, and it has measured over 400 feet deep. At that depth, it becomes very dark, cold, and not much can survive down there. The submarine expedition also discovered bodies of 2 divers at the bottom. They were believed to be 2 out of 3 divers who had gone missing while diving there. This massive hole is a very popular spot for scuba divers for its crystal blue color and being able to see many different species in and around the area. There are many different types of fish, including the midnight parrotfish and the Caribbean reef shark, along with different shark species like the bull shark and hammerheads. In 2012, the Discovery Channel ranked the Great Blue Hole as number 1 on its list of the top 10 most amazing places on Earth, and if you're interested in checking out this natural wonder, there are full-day trips from the coastal tourist communities in Belize, and you can explore the Great Blue Hole. In at number 3 we have vampire squids. Not only are vampires on land, but they also been found in the ocean. The vampire squids reside throughout the oceans all around the world, mainly in tropical oceans in extreme deep sea conditions. This squid uses its organs and its unique oxygen metabolism to be able to thrive in the parts of the ocean with the lowest concentrations of oxygen, which is extremely hard to do for many other sea creatures. The vampire squid is the only known cephalopod able to live its entire life in what's known as the oxygen minimum zone, at saturations as low as 3%. These squids were discovered during the Valdivia expedition in 1898, which was led by Carl Chun, a zoologist who was inspired by the Challenger expedition, and wanted to verify that life does indeed exist below 300 feet. Back then, much of the sea wasn't known about, let alone explored, so this was very new for that time, and during the expedition the vampire squid was found. When the discovery was made, they were originally described as an octopus because of their physical appearance, and 8 arms, but they are united by a web of skin and were later assigned to be part of the squid family. These scary sea creatures can grow to a length of 1 foot, and their gelatinous body varies in color from jet black to a pale reddish depending on location and lighting conditions. It is blue or red colored eyes are some of the largest in the entire animal kingdom. If these creatures become agitated, they will eject a sticky cloud of glow-in-the-dark like mucus, which will stick to their predators and make them visible to other predators while the vampire squid escapes. In at number 2 we have chimera fish. These fish are famously called the voodoo doll fish because they look like someone took many different types of parts of fish and mashed them all together, creating a terrifying looking deep sea creature. In Greek mythology, the chimera was a monstrous fire-breathing hybrid creature. These fish are closely related to sharks, and to date there are 50 species of chimera have been recorded worldwide. Most of these fish can be found in the deep ocean, in depths of over 500 meters down, so little is known about these mysterious deep sea animals because they are so difficult to study, let alone find. The chimera fish varies in color from black to pale blue to brownish gray and have long bodies with exceptionally large heads. Their eyes are large and translucent with a green color which helps them to see in the dark deep sea. These fish tend to feed on bottom-dwelling creatures like crabs, octopi, marine worms, and sea urchins. The chimera crush their prey with their 3 rows of sharp teeth, and like sharks they use electroreception to find their prey in the dark. The creatures are said to have originated over 400 million years ago during the Silurian times, but because of today's overfishing they're usually a big target, particularly in coastal waters. These creatures are essential to the deep sea ecosystem. They tend to live up to 30 years old, and they also reach sexual maturity late and produce few young, so being a target to fisheries is a huge issue for them. If you're ever going scuba diving, I would beware of the predatory creatures, but thankfully they tend to reside in the deep sea, but they are found in oceans all throughout the world except in Antarctica. And finally, in at number 1 we have garbage. One of the most terrifying on this list is the amount of garbage in our oceans. Garbage is ugly, and it is a threat to all of us on land and especially those living in the oceans. Whenever you go to a beach, no matter in your hometown or on the other side of the world on vacation, you have probably seen some sort of garbage or debris floating in the water or on the beach. The amount of waste in our oceans have created islands of trash that collect into massive piles that float on the surface. One of the most notorious ones is the Great Pacific Patch, or the Trash Vortex, which spans from the west coast of North America to Japan. Last year it was recorded that there are about 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic waste in our oceans, and studies expect this number to triple in the next 2 decades if no significant action is taken. When researchers and divers traveled down to the deepest part of the ocean, which was a record depth, there was one thing that was so unexpected that they saw. This expedition was done by American undersea explorer Victor Vescovo, who was the first person to dive to the deepest points of the Earth's ocean, traveling over 35,000 feet, and is the deepest manned sea dive ever recorded. During his dive, he discovered something truly terrifying and completely unexpected. In the deepest part of the ocean, where no one has ever traveled, a plastic bag was found. Not only are there large pieces of plastic and garbage in our oceans, but it's the microplastic and the remains of trash that are still composting that are more threatening to marine life than anything, because they can quickly enter and poison the creatures living in our oceans and even people. The ocean is vital to our survival, and the amount of garbage and plastic found in our oceans is baffling, and we as humans need to make some serious changes. Coming in at number 5, we have stranded ship. In Zakynthos, Greece, on the beautiful beaches lays a haunting sight of a stranded and rusting MV Panagiotis ship washed up on the shore in 1980 and continues to lay on the sand to this day. Many tourists come to view this phenomenon, and due to the mysterious ship, it's been nicknamed Shipwreck Beach. Little is known about the ship and is highly debated. One theory is that the ship was used for smuggling and abandoned when the crew were being pursued by the Navy on their way to Piraeus from Albania. Another theory states that the ship was making its way from Turkey with a freight of contraband cigarettes headed for Italy. When encountering stormy weather, the ship went into a cove where the crew abandoned the ship in fear of getting caught. Soon after the ship was abandoned, rumors started swirling that the ship had many valuable items on it, and authorities eventually convicted 29 people for looting cargo and valuable equipment from the wrecked ship. The location of the Panagiotis was prominently featured in the hit Korean drama Descendants of the Sun, leading to a surge of interest among Chinese and Korean tourists. This beach was briefly closed for tourists in 2018 due to the fear of landslides due to a large boulder falling onto the beach, but left the ship unharmed. The beach was later opened, and that same year the beach was named as the world's best beach in a poll by over 1,000 travel journalists and professionals. The beach and surrounding areas are stunning, but the mystery of the ship lingers and gives creepy vibes when you're on vacation in such a beautiful place. Some tourists have stated while getting close to the ship they've heard noises coming from inside, and some locals believe that this ship is haunted by the past crew members. In at number 4, we have numerous lost cities. One of the most famous lost cities that have been located in the ocean is the lost city of Atlantis. The lost city used to actually consist of a few islands where the founders had created a utopian civilization and became a great naval power. Their home consisted of concentric islands separated by wide moats and linked by a canal. The island of gods contained gold, silver and other precious metal and had an abundance of rare and exotic wildlife. Many believe Atlantis and the story behind it was a fictional story that was created by an ancient Greek philosopher Plato, but others believe it was a real story and that the lost city is supposedly located in the Atlantic Ocean, while others say it's the Mediterranean or under Antarctica, and this is a popular debate. Besides the highly debated Atlantis, there are currently at least a dozen lost cities that rest at the bottom of the ocean near places like Greece, Japan and India. The sunken palace of Cleopatra is one of the most fabled underwater remnants of the ancient world. It had sunken more than 1400 years ago when an earthquake and tsunami hit Alexandria, Egypt. One of the most spectacular and intact lost cities is Shicheng, or otherwise known as the Lion City, which is located at the bottom of China's Quandao Lake. Not from ancient times, but apparently it was purposely flooded in 1959 to make room for a dam and an adjoining hydroelectric station. Another lost city comes from Dwarka, India, which is known as the Gateway to Heaven, which was an ancient city dating back as far back as 574 AD. The ancient Dwarka was sunken by the rising of the ocean levels and taken to the bottom of the sea at the Gulf of Cambay. Marine archaeological explorations have shed light on the structures and other artifacts these ancient people lived in. Many things have been seen and recovered, like ancient structures, grids, pillars, stone anchors, pottery, stone sculptures, bronze, copper, and so much more. In at number 3, a suspected UFO. In 2011, 2011, a group of Swedish divers discovered a mysterious object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea, which is a part of the Atlantic Ocean. The divers that were exploring the sea floor that came across the UFO-shaped object had their equipment stop working as they approached the object. Professional diver Stephen Hogenberg, who is part of the Ocean X team, said that some of the team's cameras and satellite phones refused to work when directly above the object and would only work when they were at least 200 meters away from the so-called UFO. The Swedish diving team noted there was a 985-foot flattened out runway leading up to the object, implying that it skidded along the path before stopping. Member Dennis Asberg said, "I am 100% convinced and confident that we have found something that is very, very, very unique." Many of the divers were convinced that their finding was in fact a UFO, but some added theories that maybe the object could have been a meteorite or an asteroid, a volcano or a U-boat from the Cold War, but no one was really sure. The divers had returned to the site the next year to get a better look at the anomaly and had in fact found a second object near the first finding. They had taken a sonar image of the new finding due to mysterious electrical interference. It wasn't much of a clear image, and the group had only released the original finding image because the second finding was so blurry. With only a single blurry image and little information, many speculate that the object at the bottom of the Baltic Sea could in fact be a UFO, a portal into another world, or even an underwater Stonehenge. The theories received more attention when artist Hawk Vact had created a 3D interpretation of the mysterious object, which looks eerily similar to a UFO or something not of this world. On December 10, 2014, the website Earth We Are One actually published an article claiming a UFO shaped like a Millennium Falcon from Star Wars had been discovered at the bottom of the Baltic Sea and explained more about the dive and findings. We may never really know what this mysterious object truly is, and many believe it might be, but others believe it could be something else, but no one really knows. In at number 2, we have giant eyeball. In 2012, a giant eyeball was found by a beachcomber in Pompano Beach in Florida, and this discovery is baffling wildlife officials. The softball-sized eyeball was reported to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission and then sent to the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute in St. Petersburg to be put on ice, so further analysis could be done to try and figure out what sea creature this eyeball had come from. Marine biologists will use genetic testing to try and solve this mystery and try and find an answer. When the picture came out of this mysterious eyeball, the internet went crazy, and the mystery eyeball soon went viral, and some have suggested that the eye came from a monster fish, a giant squid, or even a whale. Many people are leaning towards the eyeball is from a giant squid, but the spokeswoman for the Fish and Wildlife Research Institute, Carly Segelson, said they are leaning toward a different scenario. The primary suspect right now would be a large fish like a swordfish, a tuna or some sort of deep water fish species. Heather Bracken Grissom, an assistant professor in the marine science program at Florida International University in Miami, believed that this huge blue eyeball may have come from a deep sea squid or a large swordfish. The professor and her colleagues concluded that the eyeball's lens and pupil are similar in shape to that of a deep sea squid, and noted that a deep sea squid's eyeball can be as large as a soccer ball and can easily become dislodged. After the marine biologist's test came back, they were still left with not many answers of what creature this eyeball came from, but it was determined to have bone fragments around it, debunking the theory of it being from a giant squid. Many different parts of different sea creatures have washed up or have been discovered by divers, but soon determined by marine biologists to be a specific sea creature or species, but this eyeball continues to be a mystery. This story just proves that we know very little about the ocean and who or what is swimming down there, especially in the deepest depths of the sea. And finally, in at number 1, we have Icicle of Death, or better known as the icy finger of death. It creeps through the ocean's depth like a frozen eel, an eerie phenomenon known as brine icicles. Brinesicles are most commonly called the icicles of death. It freezes everything it touches. Only discovered in the 1960s, these things grow towards the sea floor from the base of the Arctic and Antarctica sea ice. This phenomenon happens when extremely cold brines sink to the bottom of the water, reaching warmer seawater below. The water around it flash freezes, creating a descending tube of ice known as a brinicle. Sometimes an underwater icicle reaches the seafloor, and when it does, a web of ice forms and spreads, entombing and freezing everything in its path, including any unlucky sea life such as a starfish and sea urchins. Andrew Thurber, professor at Oregon State University, an avid diver, had actually seen a brinicle bloom firsthand and stated, They look like an upside down cacti that are blown from glass, like something from Dr. Seuss's imagination. They're incredibly delicate and can break with only the slightest touch. The formation of a brinacle was first filmed in 2011 by producer Catherine Jeffs and cameraman Hugh Miller and Doug Anderson for the BBC series Frozen Planet. They can even create brine pools, which are called the black pool of death, and are toxic to marine animals due to their high salinity and anoxic properties, which can lead to toxic shock and possibly death. Based on what scientists have learned so far, they believe life on Earth may have originated from these tentacles, and that they may even harbour conditions suitable for life to form on other planets and moons.
In at number 5, submarine disappearance. Back in 1968, submarines from 4 different countries just all of a sudden disappeared. The 4 submarines were the SS Scorpion from the US, the INS Derrick from Israel, the Miner from France, and the K-129 from the Soviet Union. There are many theories out there about what happened to these vessels, from self-firing torpedo accidents to government conspiracy theories. But nonetheless, all these submarines remain missing to this day with no explanation. And knowing how deep the potential remains could have sunk, it's unlikely we will ever know what happened to them. In our number 4 spot, mysterious creatures. Last year a video circulated online. In it we can see a giant blob-like creature floating around near a deep drilling oil rig. This creature fascinated everyone as no one could tell what it was. It seemed to almost be glowing like it was lit from within. It was extremely large and managed to continuously change its shape. Some people figured it was an undiscovered creature, and that it just decided to crawl up from the depths of the ocean, while others took a bit of a stretch and they said it could have been some proof of some type of alien presence. Researchers soon found out that this was actually an insanely gigantic jellyfish, but many people were confused of why it came so close to the surface. It was possible that the drilling disturbed it from the deeper parts of the ocean, but nonetheless it was the first time anyone had ever seen a jellyfish this size, and it's pretty creepy knowing that it's just been lurking down there and it's brave enough to come to the surface. At number 3, Baltic Sea anomaly. This was first discovered as recent as 2011 by a group of divers. They were pretty confused when they came across this 60-meter thick circular object that was in the sea at the depth of 90 meters. There's a 300-meter track that actually leads to this unidentified object. Both explorers and scientists are unable to figure out what it is or where it came from. Some speculate that this is a UFO ship that sunk in the water a long time ago. Then there's the theory that this was a German ballistic object that landed in the ocean during World War II. In at number 2, Japanese mermaids. Now, I don't know about you guys, but personally, I believe in mermaids. They could be out there, we don't know. But the mermaids I'm going to talk to you guys about were nothing like Ariel. Due to its geography, Japan has always had a close relationship with the waters that surrounded the islands. And centuries ago, the story of the human fish came to light. These stories of horror and fear were told by fishermen. The Japanese mermaids are described as grotesque beasts that look like a cross between a fish and a monkey rather than a fish and a beautiful woman. Some would even be said to possess horns and fangs. So basically these mermaids would be able to shapeshift so they could appear as beautiful women and lure fishermen into the water. Then they would turn themselves into giant jellyfish and kill the man and drag him to the depths of the sea. So it is a long shot, but I don't know, there's a lot of mysterious creatures in the ocean. And 95% of the ocean is still unexplored, so who knows what's happening down there. Which brings us to our number 1 spot, the scariest deep sea mystery, the unexplored sections of the sea itself. It's so scary to think that only about 5% of the world's seafloor has been explored. That leaves an insane 95% that's a mystery. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface. There's still so much to learn and explore. It's expected that there are millions of species that are still down there, aka mermaids, that are waiting to be discovered, and it's speculated that these creatures living in the deepest part of the sea will never be known. One of the scariest things in the world is the unknown.